BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Monday, a Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. And I need to begin with something from last Friday's episode, where I asked a question to the audience. The episode was called The Psychology of Conspiracy Theories, and I gave an introductory question. Would you want to hear an overall Psychology of the Zodiac Killer episode? And in the comment section, Classic Chevy Cat Black wrote in saying that, as for the psychology of the Zodiac Killer, what a great topic. Look at all of the conspiracies surrounding that particular crime. I'd be most interested in your opinion of the first two crimes as opposed to Lake Berryessa. So it's just so completely different. The Lake Berryessa crime is the one that intrigues me the most, meaning no disrespect towards the others. Great show. But as you heard there, though, I'd be most interested in your opinion of the first two crimes, talking about Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. So I thought that this would be an excellent way to approach the episode. And as you see from the title here, this is the psychological profile of the Blue Rock Springs shooter. Now, the reason for this is it's halfway the requested comment from Chevy Cat Black, but also because recently on the channel I had done 2 episodes on the Lake Herman Road murders. One was done closer to the anniversary, talking about the murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. And a couple weeks ago, I did a Lake Herman Road Q&A session where we were discussing what you guys had said in the comments section. So I have never done one just flat out on the psychological profiling of either event, but I really wanted to talk about the Blue Rock Springs shooting because I also hadn't done a recent episode on that one. So it's important to note that psychological profiling is not perfect. And on the Anything Goes segment once, I did the murder of Kelly Cook. And there's a show called Crime Beat from Canada that talks about psychological profiling. And they described a psychological profile as an educated guess about what a criminal might be like, or what somebody might be like. Once again, Crime Beat from Canada. And you can hear more about them in our episode here, The Murder of Kelly Cook. But in regards to a psychological profile being an educated guess, maybe professional psychologists use a little bit more professional techniques and such. Maybe they are coming from a place where they're actually using a more solid methodology. I need to be 100% clear. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have any degrees or anything in this field. I'm just some guy on the internet who reads this stuff like anybody else. So in my own uneducated, uninformed opinion, let's try and look at some of this material here and what was going on at Blue Rock Springs Park the 4th of July, 1969, which saw the murder of Darlene Ferrin and the shooting of Mike Michaud. What is happening? And if anything, this would be the type of educated guess because someone who's coming at this from an unprofessional background. But first, I would like to begin with something that I learned about from Mark Hewitt, and Mark has come on the channel, but I think I heard this in his interview with Ed Opperman the first time that he mentioned, and it's what I like to call the epicenter theory, and that is that the Zodiac crimes got closer together, and then the Zodiac also did something more personal with each of the canonical crimes, first starting with Lake Herman Road, or you could even go back to Sherry Jo Bates in 66, and then there's a 2-year gap to Lake Herman Road, and then from Lake Herman Road to Blue Rock Springs, there's a 7-month gap, and from Blue Rock Springs to Lake Berryessa, there's a 2-month gap. So 2 years to 7 months to 2 months, and then from from Lake Berryessa to the Paul Stein murder, 2 weeks. And in each of these events, the perpetrator is doing something a little bit different. Like perhaps at the beginning of the Bates murders, beginning with the murder of Sherry Jo Bates, the perpetrator did something very vicious. And Michael Cole wrote this in his book, Zodiac Revisited, Volume 3. That was perhaps the Zodiac's true nature right there. But that's when the person is really coming out from behind the mask, or this is the darker side of the individual coming to light. But then this individual wants to recognize that that's a very dangerous way to commit murders. If I keep committing murders like that, I'm going to get caught. So a lot more plotting and planning and methodology went into the crimes. So then from Lake Herman Road to Blue Rock Springs, they are spaced out, but they aren't necessarily in a way that is very personal. Like at Lake Herman Road, some bullets were fired, and the perpetrators, plural, disappeared. And at Blue Rock Springs now, on the 4th of July, 1969, you have the gunman approaching the car window, getting closer, looking the victims directly in the eye. Granted, he would have been holding a flashlight, so he could have had a clear view of the victims and seeing all of their features and such. They probably were a little bit blinded. And I think Mike Michaud even described it as just simply immediately thinking that it was a police officer reaching for his ID, telling Darlene Ferrin to reach for her ID. And so he's approaching the car window. It's just a little bit more intimate at Blue Rock Springs than at Lake Berryessa. The victims are tied up and stabbed. That is definitely more personal, and the perpetrator had a long, extended conversation with Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard. Then you get to the Paul Stein murder, where the gunman is riding in Paul Stein's taxi. Granted, we don't necessarily know any type of dialogue that would have been exchanged with Paul Stein, but he definitely grabbed the victim, shot him, and this is one of the few times that the Zodiac killer actually moved the body around. I mean, granted, it's just pushing Paul Stein toward the floorboards, and this is one thing that I heard from Thomas Horn, that this was most likely done so blood would not get on the perpetrator's trousers. So, like, the gunman shot Paul Stein, and he pushed him to the floorboards so then he could move things around in the taxi cab without getting blood on his pants. So there's this growing confidence, growing intimacy, but you might be thinking something about this epicenter theory that I like to call it. It's not even my own theory, just some stuff that other people have shared. Sharon Hagen's psychological profile is rather similar. But I was like, wait a second, that's not an epicenter. That's more like a climax or a finishing, but I'm certainly not going to call it the climax theory. So I'm just going to keep referring to that as the epicenter theory about this individual who is growing in confidence and perhaps getting closer and closer to the victims, especially with the canonical crimes. And if you look at Lake Herman Road to Blue Rock Springs to Lake Berryessa, the individual is definitely, well, they're getting closer together, and he's getting closer to the victims in each instance. Bear in mind, we're looking at a single perpetrator, unless you want to entertain the possibility that there were 2 shooters at Lake Herman Road. Richard Grinnell has a very good video on that subject. But in regards to the way somebody was thinking, I now have that streaming service, Paramount Plus, used to be called CBS All Access, and I was watching the show Clarice. I saw episode 1 last night, and there were just some things that they were trying to do there, talking about psychological profiling, and there's just this line where she says, "There's no intimacy in the crimes. It looks so deliberate. He's so cold, but he wants us to think that he's on fire." And, like, I mean, of course, you might be thinking about the Zodiac killer. I was thinking about the Zodiac killer. Absolutely, that type of thinking reminds me of the Zodiac killer. It's deliberate, lacking intimacy. He's so cold, but he wants us to think that he's on fire. Absolutely. As far as the killer at Blue Rock Springs, many people believe that Darlene Ferrin was the intended target, and that Mike Michaud simply got in the way. Or, as Gary Stewart put it, the Zodiac killer wanted to murder women. Why did the Zodiac also shoot men and try and kill men? Well, in Gary Stewart's theory, it's just that he was just filled with these murderous impulses because the women reminded him of a particular ex-lover. Earl Van Best is his suspect. Earl Van Best's second wife. He looks at her and he just gets these like flashbacks of his second wife, and he's just so overcome with these murderous impulses that he decides to act on them. And maybe Gary Stewart was actually onto something with that when he was saying not so much about the second wife, but killing the men or trying to shoot the men. I mean, Brian Hartnell and Mike Mageau. Mike Mageau at Blue Rock Springs survived. Brian Hartnell at Lake Berryessa both survived. And he's going after the men only to get them out of the way so that he could have access to the women. And if Darlene Ferrin was the intended target, there would have to be something like that, because at Blue Rock Springs, it appears that Mike Mageau took the initial force of the bullets and the perpetrators initially firing at him. I mean, I'm really not like a ballistics analyst or anything like that, and Mike Mageau is sitting in the front seat, allegedly, right? And then he ends up in the back seat. And I think that's how the Zodiac said he was able to shoot Mike Mageau in the knee and the leg. But miraculously, Mike Mageau did survive. I really do think it is quite a miracle. I mean, it's just sheer fortune for Mike Mageau that he survived a shooting like that. And he ends up in the back seat of the car. Darlene Ferrin, as I understand, she just collapses against the steering wheel. And by the time the authorities arrive, she's able to murmur things, but they couldn't even really make out any intelligible sounds. It really does lack intimacy. For this whole thing about how you'll hear these conspiracy theories on the internet that Darlene Ferrin was the center of this all, that Darlene Ferrin was the key to everything. A challenge to that is, where's the intimacy in that crime? What, some guy looked in the car window and had a glance at her? That doesn't sound like intimacy. There's a reason why serial killers choose to use blunt force trauma, like someone like Ted Bundy, for example. Why would he use blunt force trauma? There's a reason why serial killers like to use strangulation as their preferred method, because of the intensity that comes with it. And the Lake Berryessa shooter did not have any of that. Like, absolutely not. I mean, walking to the car window, it fits the model of someone who is growing in confidence, but that would almost suggest that this person was disconnected from Darlene Ferrin. I mean, crossed paths with her a couple times, maybe something like that in life, but definitely not this whole thing about how she's a former lover or rejected lover. I mean, and I'm not saying I know 100%. Once again, this is just my interpretation of the events. But there definitely are other ways to commit a murder like that and actually have it show that this person is unleashing rage and furiosity, especially if you think that the same person murdered Darlene Ferrin and Sherry Jo Bates, which many people do. Many theorists out there think that someone like Sherry Jo Bates, who was murdered in 1966, was stabbed numerous times. Cecilia Shepard at Lake Berryessa was stabbed numerous times. Yet this whole thing about Darlene Ferrin is the key to this all. She's the center of all Zodiac theories. I would have to put up this upload as some type of counterpoint to that, because where is the intensity? Where's the intimacy? Where is the where and how is this person unleashing their rage on Darlene Ferrin by going about it, first shooting Mike Mageau and then shooting Darlene Ferrin and then disappearing into the night? And I've said it once and I'll say it again. Either the Zodiac killer was extremely lucky, just got by on the skin of his teeth, sheer dumb luck, and he missed these police officers that were patrolling in the area, including Richard Hoffman, or perhaps there was actually some type of inside job. And I really don't like even saying that out loud, that Blue Rock Springs could have been an inside job, where, not saying that Richard Hoffman was the shooter or anything like that, but that the confidential informants of the police department were set up, something like that. And I mean, it's possible. Let's not pretend like that things like that do not happen. And, somebody is just turning a blind eye because perhaps the informants learn too much about the inner workings of the police department. There are all kinds of theories out there that Mike Michaud was an informant, that Darlene Ferrin was a confidential informant, and I really can't even say more than that because I don't want to start running my mouth and accuse somebody of murder who doesn't deserve to be accused of murder, especially something like that, like this type of horrendous betrayal. But in regards to the Zodiac killer letters, after the Lake Herman Road shooting, the Zodiac did not send in like a letter saying, "Hey, this is the Zodiac speaking. I'm the one who murdered those two kids at Lake Herman Road." That didn't come until after the Blue Rock Springs shooting. So, if we have a look at some of the letters, then let's just have a read of one of them. And this is the one that was sent after Blue Rock Springs. Dear Editor, this is the murder of the two teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl on the 4th of July near the golf course in Vallejo. To prove I killed them, I shall state some facts which only I and the police know. Christmas, spelled Christ Mass, of course. Brand of ammo, Super X. 10 shots were fired. The boy was on his back with his feet to the car. The girl was on her right side with feet to the west. 4th July. The girl was wearing patterned slacks. The boy was also shot in the knee, and the brand of ammo was Western. I notice 3 particular voices in the Zodiac killer's letters. And by voices, I mean it's personas, personalities. There are 3 different, it's just like that, 3 different types of mood that are going on. And the first is the whole superiority angle. I am superior to humanity. Why do I say this? Because of those things like that. I'm a murderer. I'm going to taunt you, and you're not going to figure out who I am. I like killing people because it's so much fun, and when these people die, they're going to be reborn in paradise, and I'm going to die and be reborn in paradise, and they're going to be my slaves. That type of superiority angle. So that's one of them. But if we go over to the Melvin Belli letter, I would like to read that here. Dear Melvin, this is the Zodiac speaking. I wish you a happy Christmas. The one thing I ask of you is to please help me. I cannot reach out for help because of this thing in me. Won't let me. I'm finding it extremely difficult to hold it in check. I'm afraid I will lose control again and take my 9th and possibly 10th victim. Please help me. I am drowning. At the moment, the children are safe from the bomb because it is so massive to dig in. The trigger mech requires much work to get it adjusted right, but if I hold back too long from no 9, I will lose all control. It says complete, but the word complete was crossed out, and the word loose is written in. Or actually, the word all is meant. I will lose all control with 2 O's of myself and set the bomb up. Please help me. I cannot remain in control for much longer. Well, that certainly doesn't sound like someone who is, I'm superior to all of you. Yeah, but please help me, Melvin. Yeah, like this is the person who is begging somebody to help him, who talks about, I have all of these murderous tendencies, and I don't really like it. I just want someone to give me psychiatric medication and a quick, gentle hug so I can cry. I'm not saying that in any silly way. There's this cry for help. There's the superiority angle. But I said that there was a third angle that I notice in the Zodiac letters. And if I were to do that one, I'm just going to go over and find the one that has the Z13 angle, because the Z13 cipher has something that I thought was I thought that one shared a different type of personality trait, and it says, "This is the Zodiac speaking. By the way, have you cracked the last cipher I sent you? My name is blank, AEN Zodiac sign 8K8M, and then Aries NAM. All right, the 13 line. The Z13 cipher. I am mildly curious as to how much money you have on my head now. I hope you do not think that I was the one who wiped out that blue meanie with a bomb at the cop station. Even though I talked about killing school children with one, it just wouldn't do to move in on someone else's territory. but there is more glory in killing a cop than a kid because a cop can shoot back. I have killed 10 people to date. It would have been a lot more, except that my bus bomb was a dud. I was swamped out by the rain we had a while back. In regards to that, I also found that this person, whoever is behind these letters, is just looking for somebody to talk to, someone who has either no friends, no true friends, or maybe there is somebody who is just has a lot of things that they want to share and say, but they're perhaps a very soft-spoken and gentle individual in their normal daily life. Like that whole thing about, I was swamped out by the rain a while back. That's the conclusion. That's the last line that is on the page. That tells me that this is somebody who is definitely not getting the attention that he wanted, but also just someone who had no one to share things with, and perhaps it had been that way his entire life, and then he reached a certain breaking point in 1968. And then, of course, really it's in the summer of 1969, as we said, after the Blue Rock Springs shooting, that this individual, whoever he was, wanted to write letters, mail them in, and start bragging about murders. And this is a big difference that people notice with the Zodiac Killer mystery. The letters, the ciphers, but not every single letter is about, I'm superior to humanity, I'm superior to mankind, I can kill people, it's better than hunting wild game in the forest. No, I've identified at least 3 different personality types in the letters. What do you think about that? Do you agree with my assessment or not? That there are these 3 major personalities, the superiority guy, the out of control individual who's crying for help, and the person who just wants to share ordinary daily life. Another example of this would be, I hope the people will wear Zodiac buttons, wear some nice Zodiac buttons, or even some not nice Zodiac buttons, or wear any Zodiac buttons. Or even that whole thing about, like, if I don't see this note in your paper, I'll do something nasty. Like someone who just wants to talk about things. Like, and the reason I mentioned the note in the paper, or I'll do something nasty, is that's from The Exorcist letter. And the beginning of The Exorcist letter is, I thought The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy ever. It's like, the third type is the person who has no one to share things with. He has no one to talk to about anything. Maybe it's some person who spent an enormous amount of time alone, or maybe it's someone who spent a lot of time around people, but never really felt like he was at the top of the dominance hierarchies. What do you have to say about my assessment of that? And please drop your ideas in the comment section below. Think of that as our first challenge question, and I will be right back after this message. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to talk about some of the ways in which you can help Black Box Online Radio. This channel relies on your support, and the best way you can help out is just by listening to some more content. If you like what you hear, you can hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends on social media. But I should also say that Black Box Online Radio now has a Teespring page, and there will be some links in the description box. Please feel free to check out some of the merchandise that is available. Almost all sizes and colors are listed. So, you can also help out by going over to the Zodiac Killer channel and watching the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, parts 1, 2, and 3. I was one of the contributors for that, and you can see some other great Zodiac content on the Zodiac Killer channel. And yes, there will be a part 4 of Obsession into Darkness at some point in the future. And for now, let's get back to the show. Okay, hello everybody, and we are back. The first thing I would like to do is to pick up right where we left off, and just revisit that question about the 3 different voices or personalities or personas that you can find in the Zodiac Killer letters. And I would ask you another question. Do you think that that is significant, or it resembles a high-functioning paranoid schizophrenic, or is it just simply different sides of somebody's personality? I mean, there are many different Zodiac letters, and it's one person just not sharing the same type of feeling and emotion the whole time. But there are numerous Zodiac suspects out there that are high-functioning, paranoid schizophrenics. So what do you think about that? And you can even dispute that if you want with me. It's just say that no, there are not three different personalities. There's just one solid voice. If you think anything like that, please write your answer in the comments section, and we will discuss it at a future AMA. But right now, I'd like to go over to ZodiacKillerFacts.com because, believe it or not, I actually like the way that this segment on Blue Rock Springs was worded. It's actually very respectful to Darlene Ferrin. It says 7469 Blue Rock Springs Park, Vallejo, California. 22-year-old waitress, wife, and mother, Darlene Ferrin was a fun-loving free spirit with many friends and admirers. On the night of July 4th, Darlene and her friend Mike Michaud had driven to Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. As they sat inside Darlene's Corvair, another vehicle entered the parking lot and abruptly left the area. The vehicle returned a few minutes later and parked behind the Corvair. Aha. First, I would just want to throw in a total interjection. I was watching a recreation of Blue Rock Springs on the Stones Unturned channel, Thomas Horan's channel, and, I mean, he just kind of has one sentence in there where it's more or less just asking the question, is it possible that this is that how do we know that it's two cars or one car, more or less like that? I mean, that really is the question. The vehicle returned a few minutes later. Are they 100% certain that that was the same car that returned? I mean, could that not have been a different one? I mean, it really seems like there would be no way to know, especially when you aren't paying attention to those things as they're happening. And bear in mind, it is almost midnight. I mean, and that's the time of the shooting, which we will have to discuss later on. Because the time of the shooting is, it's a little bit odd at Blue Rock Springs. A man holding a light emerged from the car, walked toward Darlene and Mike without warning. The man pointed a 9mm pistol at the passenger window and opened fire. Remember, Mike Michaud is sitting in the passenger seat and Darlene Ferrin is behind the steering wheel. And, okay, so he walked towards the window and opened fire. Doctors pronounced Darlene dead on arrival at the local hospital at 12:38. It says p.m. here, actually, but of course that's 12:38 a.m. And then 2 minutes later is when the famous Zodiac killer call comes in. And a lot of people out there who are a little bit more conspiratorial say that someone was standing right next to the doctors and they heard that she was pronounced dead on arrival, and then they gave some type of signal to somebody to call this in. But it could just be that that's the time frame. The Zodiac wanted to put some distance in between himself and the crime scene. She arrives at the hospital, pronounced dead on arrival at 12:38. He arrives to a phone at 12:40. I mean, there are no cell phones at the time, right? So that's just how the time frame just matched up like that. But yeah, she's pronounced dead at 12:38, and he makes the phone call at 12:40. Whoever he is, and whoever is involved with this. But the famous phone call is, "I want to report a murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." And it's I think it was on Zodiac Ciphers that was talking about how that is a recreation. There's no audio of that, and did anybody else just think it's weird that the Zodiac wrote out, "This is the Zodiac speaking," in letters, but didn't say that in the phone calls? I mean, we're not even 100% certain that this person wanted to be known as the Zodiac at the time of that phone call, because I mean, Playtime shared with me an article about that, about how they were going to give the Zodiac killer a different name that he didn't like in the paper, so he chose the name Zodiac. But also, even aside from those things, the Zodiac was referred to as the Code Killer and the Cipher Slayer. I mean, the Zodiac really wanted this name, Zodiac, and some people just simply think that it sounds a little bit more badass, better than the Cipher Slayer. I mean, people would forget about him rather quickly, or he would just be, there's just something that is a little bit silly about that, and this person did not want to be portrayed as silly. This ties back to an episode that I did previously talking all about insecurity. Whoever committed the Blue Rock Springs shooting, and if they did all of these events, then that is someone who is fueled by insecurity, someone who is very insecure, but a big problem with psychological descriptions is almost everybody has some type of insecurity. They just phrase this in different ways, and they also, the psychologists that is, and writers, they'd also like to it's like looking at the glass half full or half empty, and the half full side is your confidence, the half empty side is the insecure side, and then they just describe that in different ways. I mean, so many people have insecurities, but was this person insecure enough to commit homicide? Most likely, most likely. Now, I would like to put it on the table. This is just a theory. I certainly don't know everything about the Zodiac killer mystery, but there is a possibility that, as we said about confidential informants, and they were getting bumped off, excuse my casual expression, because that they were actually shot by someone who was connected to the drug trade, and that the police covered this up and they did not make any arrest in that because it was connected to a larger operation. More or less, they threw the informants of the narcotics department under the bus. They threw informants of any police department under the bus because they didn't want to jeopardize a larger investigation, or there's actually some type of corruption going on, interconnection with a criminal network, and not even to say that the police officers had done anything majorly legal before that. It's simply they're monitoring a bigger operation, and it could even have been one confidential informant shot another confidential informant, whether that's Darlene or Mike Mageau. And a lot of that stuff is laid out in The Myth of the Zodiac Killer by Thomas Henry Horan. But if that were the case, then that would be a drastically different psychological profile. That would instead be someone who is coming just from a life of crime and deviance, as opposed to someone who is fueled by insecurity and is unleashing these destructive tendencies, because it's a way to put rage back into the world. It's a way to get even with the world in a destructive way for being neglected. And I think it was either on Evan from Texas' channel, or maybe he wrote into Black Box Online Radio when he said that you can't really call somebody a serial killer if it's drug related. And if someone committed some murders or shootings that were involved with the drug trade, I also agree that wouldn't be a serial killer. That is a criminal. That person is committing serial offenses, but they're not what we would deem as a serial killer. Instead, a serial killer would be much more like someone who is primarily trying to hunt people for the sake of killing or torture or some type of similar and malicious purpose. And we can find that if we are dealing with one single Zodiac perpetrator, or definitely some type of organized set of murders. Because the myth of the Zodiac killer, that's the Zodiac hoax theory, saying that this was a series of unconnected murders, and it was linked together by the letters and the ciphers, and those phone calls that you heard there. Those are just like the words and the actions aren't linked together. But if you're going to we're going to look at the possibility of how one person actually set all this up. Yeah, you have someone who would be coming from a place of not only insecurity, but maybe someone who is also dealing with a lot of loneliness in life, perhaps never really felt very rewarded, as well as someone who thought that he was of above average intelligence. Maybe he was of above average intelligence. Douglas Oswald wrote in his book, The Unabomber and the Zodiac and the Unabomber by Douglas Oswald, that the person who would have committed the Zodiac crimes would have needed an IQ of at least 115. I mean, lower than that, it seems highly unlikely that somebody would have designed all this. But the Zodiac definitely goes on to become more about the letters and the ciphers. It's more about the taunts. And the murders are just the gateway into showing off this criminal masterpiece. But and then you can even look at the Stein shooting and the Lake Berryessa stabbing that happened after Blue Rock Springs as ways to show criminal versatility, as ways to be very confusing, because the way that serial killers do this is They commit these types of actions because it fuels their own excitement. Ah ha ha, I know the reason why these murders committed, and you don't. I mean, with many serial killers, it's just, they just commit murders because of their weird sexual misdeeds. But, they're like targeting sex workers. They try to kill prostitutes. They try to lure people to a vulnerable place, and they don't write letters and compose ciphers bragging about it and taunting the police with these things in the newspapers. They don't do that. This person, whoever was behind the Zodiac killer activities, wanted to do that, and he wanted to make it more about the letters and the ciphers. And I think that is another way of fueling one's own excitement, that I know the answers to all of these questions. I know the answers to all the ciphers, and you don't. I know why there are all these differences with Lake Berryessa and the Stein shooting versus Blue Rock Springs, and you don't. And that goes back to this voice of superiority that we can find in the letters. And also, someone who would have been a gifted underachiever, who knew that he had the intelligence to do things, but felt somewhat rejected by society. And what does every single person who feels rejected by society think? It's society's fault for not accepting me. Most of the time, anyway. So then that leads to a whole host of other destructive issues and tendencies. But in regards to the Blue Rock Springs shooting, I think that this definitely doesn't appear to be a crime that is filled with an enormous amount of curiosity. This doesn't appear to be a crime that is extraordinarily violent and malicious. This is firing some gunshots and getting away. And that really pulls me away from a lot of these theories about how Darlene Ferrin had some previous connection with her attacker. I've never once been convinced of anything to do with that. And I found the clip of the documentary, This is the Zodiac Speaking. I'm sure you've seen it. There's also an episode on Black Box Online Radio called This is the Zodiac Speaking, Let's Answer, where it's more or less a documentary review or just discussing some ideas in that. And Richard Hoffman appears in that, the first officer on the scene at the Blue Rock Springs shooting. And he was a plainclothes officer, mind you. And he talks about how Robert Graysmith wrote in his book that the first officer at the Blue Rock Springs shooting, Richard Hoffman, was at Darlene Ferrin's house attending a house painting party. And he just says, no, that's not true. I didn't know her. He denied it adamantly. And I was reading that section of Graysmith's book, which has been shared in a variety of ways. You know, like, I mean, the segment's been cut out and it's been spread around the internet. Just when I pulled up that section, yeah, it says very clearly, Officer Richard Hoffman was in her house. And he denies it completely. And the only thing that I think supports Richard Hoffman's innocence in that is that Robert Graysmith was a habitual liar, or he spread lots of misinformation. And he did the famous thing where he splices together sentences that should not be together. Half a sentence is true and half a sentence is false. So that's one thing. I'm not convinced that Richard Hoffman had any connection to Darlene Ferrin, but at the same time, there it is in her book. I just wanted to throw that out there, that the first officer on the scene at Blue Rock Springs with the murder of Darlene Ferrin, I mean, Graysmith was writing that he was in her house, but because of that recreation I had watched on the Stones Unturned channel, they put this segment of Graysmith's book on the screen, and he even says the shooting happened close to 10:12 a.m. on the 5th of July, 1969. And that is almost certainly not true, because the phone call that came in reporting the shooting at Blue Rock Springs was on the 5th of July at 12:10 a.m. So the shooting most likely occurred 11:55, 11:57. And I think it was Evan from Texas again who said that maybe it occurred at 12:01 a.m. on the 5th of July, but that's even pushing it. Now, these plainclothes officers, they're patrolling the park and they're doing who knows what. So if they weren't involved with this in some way, this perpetrator would have had just such a narrow amount of time to just kind of go in and go out. I mean, I'm not going to lie, wherever there's smoke, there's often fire, and knowing that these plainclothes officers, like Richard Hoffman, who have a very shady and suspicious story, are acting this way, and then 5 minutes later, there's this big shooting in Blue Rock Springs Park. That definitely gets me to think that there could be some type of inside connection. I mean, it really would appear that way, and then the policemen are perhaps expecting that both of the informants would pass away, but or did I say informants? This is all alleged. That both of the victims would have passed away. That one of them had been a confidential informant, and some type of operation backfired, and they were shot. And it's possible. It's possible, but so those markers do exist. And the final thing that I would like to talk about on the show is in regards to Machiavellian narcissism. Whereas if we get away from this whole thing about how maybe Darlene Ferrin or Mike Michaud were confidential informants and this is connected to something to do with exposing a drug dealer or something like that, if we get away from that and look at the Machiavellian angle, and I learned about a lot of this from Dr. Todd Grande when he just simply put forward the statement that the Zodiac killer, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. He put forward the statement that a Machiavellian narcissist would be someone who is thinking that they are above society, so they don't have to follow the laws of society and they can weave their way around them using their own intelligence and deception. And the reason why I said Zodiac Killer was when I watched that video, I was currently reading that book, The Most Dangerous Animal of All by Gary Stewart. And I was like, oh my gosh, Gary Stewart's suspect Earl Van Bez would most definitely be a Machiavellian narcissist if the character in the book is actually the real Earl Van Best. I mean, Gary Stewart also has horrible credibility. But if all that's true, then the Zodiac would also be somebody like that. The person who would have committed the Blue Rock Springs shooting would have been someone who thought that he was above society and he didn't have to follow the rules because, once again, man is the most dangerous animal of all. Well, what does that really mean? That means that the Zodiac Killer thought that he was the hunter of the most dangerous animal of all, that he's even superior to mankind, so he doesn't have to follow the law, and he has the justification to shoot people or to stab people because of his personality. And Michael Cole even wrote about this in Zodiac Revisited when he was saying that the Zodiac said to put the Radiant on top of Mount Diablo. The Zodiac committed a crime on December 20th, 1963. The epitome of darkness, the darkest day of the year, Mount Diablo, Devil Mountain. I'm even on top of the Devil's Mountain, is what this guy is thinking. So all of these psychological elements come into play about how someone really does just believe that they are the gifted underachiever, and in many ways in their personal life they probably are, but then they feel that they've been so rejected and so cheated by society, as well as being cheated by women, which suggests a very bad relationship with one's mother, that they have the right to commit these crimes against both men and women. Men representing society, women representing sexuality and tied to their mother. And that's why these crimes are have been arranged, and it's all done with mathematical signatures just to show off I am very intelligent and I've created this this murder mystery that you will never solve because I'm so much better than you. All right, well, thank you for listening to my little rant about the psychological profile of the Blue Rock Springs shooting, as well as comparing the Blue Rock Springs shooter to the other activities and events that have happened in the Zodiac Killer mystery. If there's anything you would like to dispute about this, please write your ideas in the comments section below. And also, you can just share anything you would like to say about the Zodiac Killer. And this was a topic that was requested by one of the listeners. So if there's something that you would like to hear about on the show, please write that in the comments section below as well. And you can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. Lots of people in writing in stuff that we will use for the AMA on Wednesday, and always BlackBoxNet88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.